to not been and things still remain the same. And I don't wanna play. So you see that this is not the way to be, and the time has come to choose. If it comes down to a fight between you and me, then you are doomed to lose.
Keep the red flag flying here.
Hello and welcome to Socialist Night Live. A little bit of a change in tonight's show, so we've been really looking forward to this one. We had with Jayne is joined us tonight, who is one of our members, and this was something that was planned. What wasn't planned is when you get real life guests who do real life jobs, they might get themselves stuck at a vaccination centre until it is far too late to come on. So because the people in our NHS work so incredibly hard, and because we got someone who's really in the NHS, then we are in a situation where one of our guests has unfortunately not been able to show up, and it was the big reason for the event tonight. The NHS have earned a pay rise, but I think between us we can actually do a pretty good job of telling people that yes, the NHS does deserve a pay rise, as long as a great many other things. Anything else that you want to talk about, for example, you are perfectly welcome to do so, and we would really appreciate you being the fourth guest tonight, audience. So if you wanted to make any comments, then there you are. You're on the screen. Okay, so I'll introduce the panel then. So, Jayne, you've never joined us before on Socialist Night Live, but you have been on Political Unmuted before. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm been a Socialist Think Tank member for, I think it's about 6 months now. I was a bit late finding you, but that means I've got lots of old shows that I'm catching up on, so that's been quite nice. I'm Labour Party member, Socialist. Oh, you'd think I'd have planned for this question, wouldn't you? I can't think of anything interesting about myself at all, but I'm here anyway.
Although that's really, really interesting anyway. And you're lucky I didn't say what's socialism to you, because I didn't do that.
We'll have to start doing that with all of our members, get them all on to do origins.
I think so. I think that's something that we're looking to do long term. So James has been doing these things. So James, you might have noticed James has been a bit more quiet lately, and that's because James has got these really, really grand plans to give basically everyone a platform like this. Anyone who wants one, a Socialist Think Tank platform that they could use at any time, which is it's a really big thing, but James is quite a genius when it comes to creating websites, creating platforms, coding things and stuff. So yeah, it could end up being a really, really exciting thing. Which ones have you been catching up on lately, Jayne?
I was trying to watch one with Bonnie the other day, but I kept on getting interrupted, so I haven't seen it all the way through yet. But I just started from the beginning. I've gone back and I'm working through in chronological order because that's how my brain works. That was the only sensible way to do it. So, I really liked the one with Jamie Driscoll. There's lots that are really good, but there were some really exciting ideas in there that he was talking about. So, yeah, I definitely recommend watching the old shows.
Yeah, they're really good. Like Jamie's was a good one. Vonnie's is brilliant as well. It's one of my favourites. Vonnie, you can see us gradually getting more and more drunk, I think, being funny, because she was really nervous, funnily enough, even though she's really brilliant. You know, she was getting really nervous, and we had a nice drink anyway, because she's a good friend anyway. So it was kind of nice just having a chat with her, really. And that's what a lot of them end up being. You know, a lot of the interviews end up just being us having a really nice chat. But I suppose my pub chats are a little bit different to other people's, I guess, if that's a standard pub chat. So, Laura, what have you been up to? Not that I don't know. But...
It depends what our viewers will be interested in knowing. I am officially calorie counting. That's a thing now. That's part of my life. Although that went out the window last night when I went to meet a friend who I haven't seen for ages, and we had a few drinks and some pizza, and it was really lovely. That was nice. And then today, obviously you'll have seen the interview that just went out with Lucy from the Gemini Project. I was really excited for that because when I was talking to her, I just found her so powerful, and I don't think she even realizes how powerful she is as a woman. She's incredible. She's been through so much, and she's managed to channel that into something positive and helpful for other people. So although I did the interview, I was really excited to watch it back and see, you know, with fresh eyes again how it played and how it came across, and it came across exactly as I thought it would. So that was really lovely. And now I'm here with you guys. I'm very happy to be. Yeah, pretty happy at the minute.
Yeah, that's good. Is anyone going to ask me what I've been up to?
I was just about to. I was just going to say, should we ask Paul? What about you, Paul? How are things with you?
I'm okay. As you know, I've been teaching Scarlett some skills today on a bike. Sticking my leg up in the air and dismounting on both sides. She can't do it yet, but I taught her the prerequisites and stuff. You know, with her being 7, it's about time she learned to do the cyclocross mount and dismount of a bike. These are things that she needs to do. So it's been quite a nice day, and I think I might have caught the sun because I'm kind of going a bit red here. But unless it's just the lighting, but you know, maybe. We'll see how it goes. We'll see if I end up going on fire or something later on. But yeah, it's been a good day, really. It's been a nice day. So a little bit frustrating seeing all the silly things that we continuously see. It's like we put something out on Socialist Think Tank earlier on the Twitter saying, you know, a few years ago, I used to look at the news every day and I'd be like, what have they made up about Corbyn today? What stupid thing are they going to make up about Corbyn today? And you knew the media were going to be all over it and inventing like all sorts of stupid things. And then today it's like, well, now it's like, oh, what stupid thing has Starmer actually done today? Because the media don't really go after him. He just comes out and like says things through his official channels. He just does something stupid, and you know, it's really, really messy. But yeah, electoral politics isn't necessarily the thing anymore. That I think is going to change things. But, you know, always keep... it's the echo of the battle, as James Connolly said. Anyway, tonight's show is about the NHS. And I'm going to start off with a statistic. We all know that the NHS has been underfunded. Or we think it. Anyway, a lot of people think that. So maybe that's not... Maybe that was a little bit GB news of me. Also, that's been quite funny. Maybe we'll talk about that later on. But... So the first thing I'd like to do is look at nurses' pay, and actually all staff in schools. In schools. I'm obsessed, you know. It's been a trade union rep in a school. You keep on saying schools. So here is a table, which is this is the salaries, and you'll be able to see this. I've sent it in the chat that, you know, porters, their real terms pay loss has been £852 from 2010 to 2021. Medical secretaries, 1,249 loss in real terms. Speech and language therapy assistants, £2,122 loss. Community nurses and nurses, £2,500, a little bit more. Radiographers and paramedics, nearly £3,500 loss over the time from 2010 to 2021. That's in real terms. That's, I think the figure's 1.19 that they use, because you'd have to spend £1.19 on what used to cost you it used to cost you £1 in 2010, would now cost you £1.19. So that's where those figures are coming from. So are there any comments on those figures at all?
What can you say? It's disgusting, especially now. I mean, it always would be, but especially now. Like, we've lived through a year and a half of a pandemic now, where all the workers in the NHS, not just nurses and doctors, but porters, cleaners, everybody have quite literally, and I'm not overselling this, put their lives on the line to protect the people of this country. If that is not worth all the money we've got spare, I don't know what is. And yet the people who had all the contracts during the pandemic, all of, the rich people's friends, made billions in profit. How is that justifiable? How is this country not in uproar? How are we not out on the streets shouting about this? Clapping your hands is all well and good as a solidarity marker, but it's not going to feed people. It's not going to stop nurses using food banks. It's not going to give them the money they deserve. It's absolutely pathetic and disgusting. And I think people need to be more angry about it, to be honest.
Jayne, why do you think we're not out on the streets over this? Please comment on the other aspects of it as well, but start off with, why do you think we're not on the streets, like out protesting this quite fervently?
I think there is an element where we're constantly pushed to be selfish and look at ourselves and think someone else wants more than me. And I do think there is, on one side of it, people don't understand inflation, so they think, well, you had £100 before and you've got £110 now, you've got more. They don't realise that actually what you bought for £100 before now costs £120, so you haven't got more, you've got less. But I also think there's a little bit of an element of people thinking, well, why should they get a pay rise when I haven't got a pay rise and my taxes are paying for it? I think that's how we're kind of prompted to think. But I think that's oversimplifying it. I was watching something about implementing the Preston model in Bristol the other day, and they were saying they did some number crunching and worked out that if they outsourced, 14 pence in every pound went back into the local economy, but if they employed locally, 61 pence in every pound went back into the local economy. And I know it's a slightly different thing, but I think it's the same principle, isn't it? You increase a nurse's wage, a hospital staff member's wage, some of it's going straight back to the government in taxes anyway, and the rest of it they're probably going to spend in the local economy, so local businesses are going to do better so they can employ more people or put the wages up for those staff. So it really does all go around. And I think the other thing is, this idea of why should they have a pay rise when I'm not? Well, keeping their standard down isn't going to raise yours. If you raise their standard, you've got more chance of raising yours. So, but I think that's where we're such a divided society now. I do think that's an element of it.
See, I've got this ridiculous smirk on my face there, and that was just because you did so incredibly well there. I couldn't agree more with everything that you're saying there, Jayne. And I know, it's a bit nerve-wracking coming on here, isn't it, when you've got all these? But I'm sure the audience will agree that you are doing absolutely brilliantly, and I couldn't have agreed more with all that. With regards to my question about why we're out, I actually think there's a couple of reasons why we're not out on this. One, we're spread so thin. There are so many things that we all care about, like whether that's Palestine, whether that's Black Lives Matter, whether that's the NHS deserve a pay rise, whether that's fighting for our jobs, whether that's doing our jobs. We're all so spread so incredibly thinly that it's very hard to pick up on any specific thing and go out there. The other thing is as well, the people, I think, who had the most respect for other people's lives during the pandemic, the people who were thinking, I'm not saying that the people who went out and protested and things had any disregard for anyone or anything like that, but I know certainly amongst my group of friends, it was the first time we'd ever gone, hang on, should we go out and protest here because there's a pandemic on? Should we add to that pandemic? And we seem to care about it in a way that the very wealthy didn't care about it. Like we saw the way, I've seen a few memes this week of Boris Johnson and all the G7 people clearly not socially distancing, but then saying everyone else should, and it's that hypocritical thing. And I think people who care about these things, whether they consider themselves to be socialists, whether they consider themselves to be on the left, even the people who actually, because I think there's a lot of people who are accidentally, they don't know the left wing, they don't know they believe in these things. They go out and they respected all these things, and now they've found they're being told by other people who weren't willing to do that what they should do. And I think there's an element of that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so. I think we could. I think a lot of these issues that we're out campaigning for intersect in one place, and that place is a Tory government or capitalism, really, because let's face it, it's not just the Tories who have gone down the path of neoliberalism and capitalism and gleaning money from that and power. That's the structure we need to be tackling, really. And I think if we focused our efforts on that, I think it would, and I hate to use the word trickle down, but it would affect so many things, because we need a system now. The parliamentary system we've got is not fit for purpose because it serves one section of society, and that section of society is not the majority, unfortunately. And I think if we had a more empathetic structure, a more collective structure, that actually all of these issues would come into play. It would be having empathy with, people who are struggling because of war, living in war-torn countries, to people here who need help, to being a fairer society, having equal opportunities for everybody, making sure pay is actually representative of the job people do. I do think, I don't know what the answer is, but I do think the current system we're working under is, as I say, it's not fit for purpose, and it's not working, and it hasn't been for some decades, and it seems to be getting worse and worse and worse as we go.
We've got quite a few good comments, and I know that you can probably both see some of them yourselves. Quantum Skyline saying, "You're so right about social distancing. I couldn't go and see my daughter's sports day while I watched thousands of fans at the Glasgow football fan zone." And I think, like, again, there was another meme this week where it was talking about Sarah Everard's vigil, and they were saying that the police saw people having a socially distanced vigil because someone was murdered. No, they don't like that. You'll get battered in the head. And they see loads of football fans there who could probably cause a bit of problem if they fought back. And not to say, like, I saw the Scotland fans who'd gone down to Leicester Square cleaning up after themselves, which was really nice. Really nice to see that, like, there were actually people. Horrible that some people had left it behind, but yeah, it was really nice to see that. So it's not saying like all football fans are bad, but it's that double standard, isn't it? It's not who's doing what. It's that double standard of, well, we'll go after the people who are protesting, or we'll go after, we'll go after, I don't know. Wasn't there a single NHS nurse who was fined £10,000 on the same day in Glasgow that the Rangers fans went out and were fighting each other in the streets and weeing everywhere and all those things, and it's like, it's completely disproportionate. It's clearly there's something else going on. If they're worried about social distancing, they would tackle the actual problem rather than someone standing socially distanced, Yeah.
But it was really heartwarming that we crowdfunded and they raised the £10,000 for the nurse in 24 hours. So at least there's a lot of people with their heads screwed on, even if our system's not working. Yeah,
exactly. Right, I'm going to go through a few more comments here because they have been exceptionally high quality as always. So I'm just going to go up from the bottom to the top. So Ruth Davison, a lot of people who work in the NHS aren't allowed to talk about things because their contracts contain a disclaimer. The other thing is that a few people I work with are embarrassed to ask for anything. They think they're very lucky to have worked for the NHS over the last year and have a secure job and have not been laid off as others have. I'm going to come back to that point in a bit, but any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think there's that idea of, oh, you should be lucky to have a job is a mindset that we've all been pushed into, really, because of the situation that we're in this country and have been over the last 10 years. People should just be lucky to have a job and shut up. No, we've got trade unions for a reason. We've got trade unions because you shouldn't be lucky to have a job. Your employers should be lucky to have you working hard for them, and we should protect our workers, and there should be enough work to go around, but instead we keep forcing more hours on individuals and cutting people out of roles and making it physically impossible to survive in modern day society, because there's no such thing as a work-life balance anymore. But it's okay, because you should be lucky you've got one. It's pathetic.
I think
It seems really. Sorry, Paul. Go
Please
ahead.
continue, Jayne. Please continue.
Sorry, I was just going to say, it just seems increasingly ridiculous that we seem to be driven constantly to value everyone according to their financial wealth, when actually, with all the cuts to the services, we're completely dependent upon charities providing vital services. So it just sends itself round in circles. It's a ridiculous argument to even think that people should be valued by the amount of money they're earning.
See, Carl's coming out with some zingers, and Carl nearly came on tonight, and through some technical difficulties, he wasn't able to, but he's been saying some really good stuff there. He said it's a Keynesian multiplier effect. Spend the most basic level workers' wages, and it goes through the economy, adding value with every spend. This came up on Political Unmuted the other day, and John was saying, well, like, at least they're spending the money on yachts. And I was trying to explain that actually they've proven that if you spend money at the top on things like luxury items like yachts or diamonds or Rolls Royces or whatever, and most people, they work in the Rolls Royce factory, actually work on the aeroplane engines. But anyway, so that just circulates, because they all own those companies, and that wealth circulates at the top. And if you spend it at the bottom, it circulates around the people who actually need it. And that's part of what you were saying earlier on, Jayne, where you've got, like, if you spend locally rather than outsource and all sorts of things, doesn't end up offshore. And that's again, I'm going to reference a couple here. Joe Guinan spoke about this in our interview about how that works, so well worth a watch. And and there are a couple of others that have popped into my mind as well, which I'm sure that'll help with these. John Trickett as well mentioned the wealth of billionaires, and he's got so many statistics on how much money has been earned. Is it earned by billionaires? I don't think so, but billionaires have got 673 billion richer. That was like last year. That was in November. It's now $1 trillion. So billionaires have added $1 trillion to their net worth over the past year, and that's during a pandemic. They've profited so heavily from everyone else's misfortune, and it was almost the exact same number is the amount that normal working class people have lost over that time. It's been a direct wealth transfer over that time. So John Trickett, very well worth a watch there. Are there any comments that are coming up that you want to?
Yeah, I just saw one. I mean, I can't scroll back to see them all. There's been a few absolutely brilliant ones I'm sure you'll bring in, but I did spot Chris Hood's one. Charity is a failure of government's responsibilities. Now, I have a particular interest in that because, Paul, me and you've talked about this a few times, and it's really unpopular to have this opinion, but bear with me. Help for Heroes, okay? Really, really popular. Everybody's like, yay, heroes, get in. We should give them money. Great. People who go to war for us and people who fight for this country, absolutely brilliant. Well done. Fantastic. I do not believe it should be the job of normal people in this country to fund those people, because the government are the people who sent them to war. If they're having trouble, it should be the government's responsibility to look after the people that they've put in danger. I don't understand why that is such a foreign concept. I think it's lovely that charities exist, and it is obviously through the power of collectivism and empathy from everyday people who've gone, these people need help. But Chris is right. It is essentially a government failing. Charities are for people who need help. Isn't that the role of the government? Shouldn't the government, and especially with things like Help for Heroes, because they they are heroes, yes, but they are people that have been put in these situations by a government who has then forgotten about them, let them come home, let them live on the streets, let them not be able to get a job, let them suffer, let them have mental problems that are absolutely unimaginable to people in this country because of the things they've seen in war-torn countries. But I tell you what the government can do really, really effectively. Point the finger at immigrants and it's their fault. So let's pick a bad guy and blame them. Let's not try and help anybody that we have damaged. It's really, really infuriating. And I just, and not that I begrudge charity at all. I just don't think it should be necessary. And I absolutely agree with Chris Hood on that point.
Jayne?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think Chris put the quote from Henning Bain, didn't he? They don't do charity in Germany, they pay taxes. And I know there's arguments about, monetary theory and taxes, but the point is the state should have the responsibility to look after its citizens. It has huge resources. We're a really wealthy country. It's absolutely inexcusable that vital services are having to be provided by charities, and even then they're struggling to do so.
It's pretty strong because I know that Chris Hood actually does incredible work for MenCap, which is a charity, and it's a huge point he's making there, and fair play to him. That's he does a lot of really, really good things, and it should be the state that's dealing with things like that or funding that. The other aspect to all this is, they would be quite willing to come out and applaud charities. So the ones you mentioned, Laura, like Help for Heroes. I remember when everyone was out and going, "Oh, Help for Heroes, it's such an important thing." It was like, "Oh, hang on. We went to an illegal war. They're injured because of an illegal war. The least they can do is for the state to look after them. The least that they can do for those people is to look after them after they were injured fighting a war that was dubious to say the least." And I think it's like, it's a similar kind of concept to like going and getting your photo taken at a food bank. It's like, look at me, I'm at a food bank, grinning away like a Cheshire cat, thinking, "Oh, look at me, I'm at a food bank, look at me, I'm a great person." Do you know, I like the story about Paul Howell, our local MP, and one of the workers at the local food bank thought he was a customer of the food bank because he turned up at the food bank to say he'd gone to this food bank. And the people who worked there were like, well, the volunteers who work, they don't even work there, the volunteers, thought that he was, someone to help. And they were going over and saying, "Is there anything you need?" He's like, "Oh, no, it's fine, well, I might have another cup of tea," that kind of thing. And he's like, he's in the food bank for a... This is a story I've been relayed, so he'll probably come back and be like, "That's not right. Oh, it's deplorable that you're saying this." But that's...
Disingenuous, Paul.
Disingenuous to say something true. But so that's a kind of thing. And I made a comment this week on Twitter, which was kind of really surprisingly popular, which was about... I was saying that I'm sick to death of... I think I called it bullshit. Like, when people are litter picking, if you just go around for a litter pick, and I think it's lovely that people litter pick, by the way, I think it's a really nice thing to do, but if you just going around with a litter picker, picking up litter and going, "Hey, look at me, I've collected this bag of litter because I'm a political candidate." Like, can you imagine Churchill or Thatcher? Like, like these people doing that, or or people on the left as well. Can you imagine like Nye Bevan going around saying, "Look at me, I've got this like bin bag full of rubbish"? They'd be like that. It's politicians. It's become this really stupid thing where they're trying to get this like, "Look at me, I'm a local volunteer," and that's the thing. And there's some really good local politicians who do it. So I'm not having a go at individual people here. It's just the whole concept that like, this job that could be done by someone, it's a job, it's a paid job, someone could be getting paid to do that, and probably should be. It's probably a lot more value than a lot of the things we pay for. And people are going around and doing it voluntarily and then not making the political point that this should be done. Or like, you should be tackling litter in different ways. Mm-hmm. It's all like
the thing with that though, Paul, is that the going to food banks and stuff like that and smiling is working. The electorate are falling for it. Look at what happened in Hartlepool. There were members of the public that said, "I'm voting Tory because they've opened more food banks." I mean, how ridiculous is that? How they're just so detached from what's been happening. How can you miss the fact that under the Tories, we've needed food banks? It's not them saving us by opening them. It's their fault that we need them. It's absolutely just mind-boggling. And how have the public missed this? It can't just be down to the fact that the media are not on side with anyone
It's
other than
just
the
bad.
Tories.
It's bad
surely.
politics, though. That's where it's come from. It's come from bad politics, where people are just like, "Oh yes, well, I'll turn up at a food bank and have a photo taken." Like we've done it as well. I've had photos taken at food banks. I've looked as miserable as sin on them on purpose, being like, "This is disgusting. I can't believe that there are food banks. This is ridiculous." And every single time we're like, "These should not need to exist." But thank you so much to the staff that do them. This is a disgrace. I think. Mark Lungley's made a really good point. He says, have you noticed whenever there's a picture of Jeremy made in Jeremy Corbyn at a food bank, he's working there, not posing. Now that is correct. If you want to go and volunteer at one of these places, like, he's not there for the photo opportunity. It's like, there's lots of people who do things like that. There's people who maybe volunteer at a homeless shelter on Christmas Day who don't do it for the photo opportunity or whatever. There are people who do good things and they're not doing it for publicity. And doesn't it absolutely spit in their faces when someone's rocked up and said, "Oh yes, I've got 10 minutes of my time, I'm going to turn up to a food bank and take a photo." It's awful. And we've always done it with a massive donation as well, by the way, and we've always done it on behalf of local members and said, this is what we as a collective have done. That's why we're there taking a photo, just to say, like, this is the people we're helping. And I think that's okay, but awful. And I think politicians of all colours have made it this stupid thing where they turn up and smile. And Jayne, it's like you're from a completely different area of the country to us. Do you see this happening all over the place?
Yeah, we do. I mean, it's a different thing, but recently we in my town we didn't have anywhere that was doing the vaccination jabs, and so a local Labour councillor, she started to petition. She worked really hard. She was sending letters. She was getting other people to send letters. She was talking to people. She worked so hard, and she managed to get one of the local pharmacies to do the vaccinations. And our local Tory MP went and did a photo op outside, pretending is a strong word, but giving the impression that she was responsible for this. And I think probably a lot of people don't realise that our Labour councillor, she didn't go for the glory. She hasn't made a thing of it, but it was her. It wasn't the MP. So, but it's the same thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. Any other comments coming in? Like, we're getting a lot of agreement on this, that Yvonne Bannister mentions it's very American, all this self-promotion. And there's a couple of things on the NHS that I'm going to come back to in a bit, but is there anything that's sticking out to you apart from the again we're getting those starred out comments when people have said classes because it's starred out asses. I think I'm going to have to unblock the word asses. I don't think I'd mind it if someone called someone some asses. It's not that bad, is it? Anything,
I think
Laura?
Ruth's mentioned Ruth's mentioned the ambulance service, and that is not part of the emergency services. So I'm not sure if I've understood completely, but I know that I've been told that there are lots of charity institutions that provide vital services that choose not to receive state funding because of the restrictions that puts on what they can do and what that potentially means for them every time there's a change of government. So the way our system's structured makes it very hard for those organisations to the point where they'd rather rely on public donations so that they can run the service the way they want to run it.
Laura?
Wow. Oh, that's just a damning indictment, isn't it? Dear me, I honestly didn't know that. Thank you for that, Ruth. That it all goes back to the same thing. I'm going to end up bleating on about the same thing constantly tonight. I can feel it coming, but that's just unacceptable. It's unacceptable that they have to not take government funding because the government funding isn't sufficient and have to pretend to not be an emergency service. I mean, come on, what? I just feel like, how do we get the message out? How do we educate people that these things are happening? It's become unmanageable now, the list of failures that this government are doing. It's just, it's awful.
Do you know who I blame? I've been speaking to someone about this today. Do you know who I blame for all this? New Labour. That and bear with us because this is going to take a couple of minutes to describe, right? But we're talking about trade unions and me and this guy who's like absolutely class. We're talking about him becoming a union rep, and he'll make an absolutely outstanding union rep. He'll be brilliant, but he wants to see some proper, like, old school militant go on, and the problem that we have under New Labour is everyone decided that they would become these like kind of corporate-y, suit wearing, we'll be ultra professional. Actually, we should listen to the bosses because the bosses aren't that bad, and actually, we're not on the opposite side to one another, and they aren't trying to do us down. And what's happened over time is we've always known they have been, but there's been this element within, like, so I work in a school and I see this all the time. You've got the climbers, and it's quite a good way of seeing, like, there's some people who are classroom teachers who see themselves as classroom teachers who'll have a chat with the cleaners and feel that they're all the same people. And then there's other people who are middle managers, the people who do the most work creation in the school because they create loads and loads of work for other people, while also working incredibly hard themselves to create this other work to try and look good to their bosses. And then there's the bosses who, like, really, most of them got out of the classroom years ago because they were terrible at the job. Then this is not universal. This doesn't happen in my place currently, but in a lot of places I've worked, the people at the top were the people who were terrible at teaching. I'm going to have to get out of here. I'm going to have to get up and get paid more. And it's this respect for these people who come in and look smart and talk a good game, not the people who actually do the job. Like, if you've got someone like a head teacher, they should be a head teacher. They should know how to teach. They should understand the pressures that are on teachers. And they should understand the pressures on every member of staff in the school, whether that's teaching assistants, whether that's cleaners, dinner ladies, everyone, because we've all got pressures, we're all part of the same team. But you've got people who didn't even know how to manage a classroom in charge of an entire school, and all they were good at was self-promotion. And that's what New Labour changed, I think. Like, this, I don't know, it's this corporatisation of everything, and we can be like that too, and this aspiration to be these mundane figures who don't add any value, who don't actually do the work. So everyone wanted the people to be the people who were telling everyone else how to do the work. And it's like that, again, I've mentioned memes quite a lot tonight. It's when everyone's looking around the hole and there's one fella digging the hole and there's all sorts of different people around who are doing like supervising jobs. And then there's a fella in the hole, maybe he's called Kevin or something, he's digging that and it says, our profits are down, we're going to have to sack Kevin. And it's like, and that seems to be how things are going, and I do think that's a very New Labour thing. I don't know if I joined teaching under New Labour when everyone had to wear a suit and tie and things like that, and no one could be quite relaxed and have a personality. And you had all those climbers. Sorry for the rant, everyone, but
I think I would agree, and I think the problem with the New Labour era was very much the idea that we have to join the game. We have to be seen as the people who are already in power and be in opposition to that, but in the same vein. So we have to have the suits, we have to look the part. And the problem with that is that the public did buy into that, and that's where we get the problems now with, like going back to Jeremy Corbyn, he was too shabby. He couldn't be a leader because of the kind of jacket he wears. I mean, that is not... For me, that is not what signifies a good leader. I don't care what people wear, and we shouldn't care what people wear. It's up to them. And I think that is just it's informed the public thinking on what MPs and what leaders are supposed to look like, and then that has removed the critical thinking of our electorate to go, actually, hang on, these people are to represent me. I don't look like that. I don't earn this amount of money. I don't talk like that. I didn't go to Eton. I think we need to try and find a way to speak to people in general, not just, speaking to ourselves and in this little echo chamber that we all inevitably have, because we tend to gravitate towards people who think the same way as us. But there's a lot of people who just, and I speak to them, people who would class themselves as on the left, who say, well, you couldn't vote for that Jeremy Corbyn because he's a mess, but Keir Starmer looks like a leader. And I'm like, okay, tell me what you think. Tell me what Tony Blair did, or what Keir Starmer's doing, or what Boris Johnson is doing that speaks to you. What policies have you seen that would benefit your life? And they can't really answer that. It is all about, we've come into this sort of X Factor style of politics, where it's, you've got to look the part, you've got to have the X Factor. And I'll go back again, as I've done on many times on this show, to something my ex-MP said, was that what is the point of principles without power? And my argument will always be, what is the point in power without principles? Because you're just playing the same game as the Tories are. We don't want to be Tory light. We want to make actual change. We want to make people's lives actually better. And it doesn't matter if you don't need to wear a suit and tie to argue the truth. And it really bothers me that that's where we are.
Yeah, Jayne?
Yeah, I think I remember when Jeremy Corbyn was derided in the press for wearing a coat that only cost £75, a remembrance ceremony. And the fact that that wasn't in any way palatable just shows how little we think of ourselves, how prepared we are to accept that we're inferior because we're working class, and how much better wealthy people must be than us. Because how on earth is it even acceptable? Why aren't we really angry about this? Why aren't we absolutely furious about the proportion of MPs who went to private school compared to the proportion of the population? I think we've really got a bit of an inferiority complex, where we really genuinely, the working class in this country, we really think these people must be something special. They must be cleverer than me. They're not. They've just been very lucky.
Absolutely. You two are getting a lot of support on these things after my rant, and yeah, I think you've managed to put it more eloquently than I did after I set him up. I set him up and you knock him down. What I suppose, like, while we're talking about suits and things, and that kind of vacuous nature of where politics has gone, what do we think about the fact that at this latest by-election, Labour only got 622 votes, when all they cared about was, apparently this was going to be it's going to be the big change, wasn't it? It was going to be now we're serious about winning votes, now we're serious about winning elections. And at the same time, we've had people trying to claim that, somehow this is a good result for Labour. This is great for Labour to only get 622 votes somewhere, because it's one less seat for the Tories. But the Liberal Democrats are more likely to go into coalition with the Tories than anything else. So, thoughts on that?
Well,
you're too polite, you two. Or is it that you're just like, oh God, where do you start?
Well, I think I mean, if you read the news, I think obviously the fact that Labour only got 600 odd votes was down to Keir Starmer's chief of staff, but he's been sacked now, so we don't need to worry. Everything's fine.
Yeah, mentioned there with the lost the deposit. How's that going on, Jayne? What do you think?
I think most of the public don't have a clue who any officials or members in Labour are, so I don't really think we can think that it's down to any chief of staff. But I mean, if it was some brilliant conspiracy to get the Tories out by switching all the votes to the Lib Dems, then I'd rather have a Lib Dem in Parliament than a Tory. It probably wasn't that. But I do think as a Labour Party, we need to tell people what we're offering. We need to offer hope. And our last two manifestos at the last two elections, they were fantastic. They offered solutions to so many of the problems that are destroying people's lives at the moment. We shouldn't be moving away from that. We need to focus back on that. And offer people some hope, because they can have hatred, they can blame immigrants, or we can offer them some hope. And there's not really anything in between that's going to interest them or excite them. So we need to be the other side of that.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, well made there. There's Tim Dredge is saying Chesham and Amersham was largely about HS2 and local planning. Don't read too much into it for any party. That's probably fair. It's quite interesting as well that the Lib Dems' national position is to support HS2, but they locally decided that they would not support HS2. So locally they don't support HS2, but nationally they do. So therefore they should be able to, they should win. That's the vacuous as ever, and that's not really going to help anyone, is it? That form of politics. Scott Marriott, thanks for coming along, Scott. You mustn't forget the Register of Members' Interests tells you more about a politician than anything else. Starmer's donors speak for themselves and explain his actions perfectly. Paid to undo everything we built and give the party back to the lobbyists and cash for honours peers. Yeah. Sounds like you want to talk there, Laura.
Yeah, I do. I worry that is. It's difficult because as a Labour Party member, I want the Labour Party to succeed. I do believe in the core values of the Labour Party. I just don't believe that we're espousing them right now. I'm also a cooperative party member, and there was a big event on from the co-op today, and listening to the speakers there, the co-op's much more aligned with my beliefs in that it's like, let's work together and build from the bottom up. And I can't hear enough of that. I think that's brilliant. And yeah, I do. I agree there. I think things aren't really going that well, and we're focusing on the wrong things.
I'm going to. We mentioned this earlier on. I noticed Tony Pierre made a comment earlier on from Northern England Labour Left. So hello, Tony, if you're still watching. It's nice that you're here. Earlier on, Northern England Labour Left shared this, so I'm going to quickly share it on the screen, which is really good. And I'm going to this is brilliant because everything's coming back to all the interviews that we've done. So Thomas Barlow mentioned David Graeber a lot, and David Graeber said, unfortunately, before he died, he said this about Keir Starmer because Keir Starmer had become the leader, and then he died, and then there was actually when Jeremy Corbyn attended the wake and there were 7 people there. There was, people very, very upset about that because clearly that's something to be upset about.
And yet there's not a word said about the Tories having a massive party.
No, there never is. But he said, the Labour Party under Starmer will abandon its core idealism and principles, and it won't even gain tactical advantage. It will be a party which gives no one a reason to vote for it, and no one will, in fact, vote for it. Like, for a prophecy, that's pretty strong, isn't it? Yeah.
But I don't know, we were talking about this. When did we talk about this? I'm sure we were on some sort of show. It was. So we've got an interview coming up next week with the Rickard sisters, who've done a graphic novel version of The Ragged Trousered Philanthropist. And we were talking about this, about how socialist poets and writers and creative thinkers seem to have this way about them where they can predict the future really, really well. Look at 1984 with George Orwell. The Ragged Trousered Philanthropist itself is basically a novel that was happening at the time, but there are so many links to that now. It's so relevant even now. And I think David Graeber could see what was happening very clearly and articulated it really well. And it's sad that he's no longer here, and I hope there are more like him coming through, because we need that. But actually we need to pay more attention to it. This is why the arts and creativity is so important, because those thinkers really understand what's happening. And again, the Tories have cut that from school. So let's go for some more Tory bashing. Absolutely pathetic that we as working class people are no longer allowed to have the opportunity to develop our creativity. Pathetic, absolutely awful. Some fantastic, talented, creative thinkers amongst the working class, some of the best, and we're not going to have that opportunity anymore.
Do you not think the people who predict the future just listen to people? Because, I know David Graeber, when he wrote that essay on bullshit jobs, and then loads of people wrote to him and he read them, and then he wrote a book about their experiences, and he actually cared. He was an anthropologist and he cared about humans. And again, like, this is so good because Paul O'Connell, when I brought him in, and he knew exactly what was going to happen with Brexit, and then a few months down the line, when it all happened, I was like, well, how could you predict that? And I said, well, it's not actually difficult to predict this. And he was saying if you use Marx's framework for understanding, what's going to happen, this is really easy stuff. This is basic stuff that you can see clearly where it's going to go if you care about people, if you listen to people. So, Jayne, what do you think?
Oh, this is where we need the political education, isn't it? I think with what's happening in the Labour Party at the moment, it's really demoralising. David Graeber, he was such an intelligent man and brilliant author, as just is what I know him as. But I think we need to remember this is temporary, and we need to take control of this situation and make what we can of it and do what we can. And we can do things outside of the party as well. And we really need to, I think, take control of the education side of it, and that's really difficult because we haven't got money. But we need to make sure, it's so important. We can't just have working class people shut out from these creative skills. We're going to have to find a way, I think, between us to try and make those opportunities available until we can change things politically.
Laura?
Yeah, just 100%. Literally everything Jayne says I agree with. And she's always right. So yes, she's right. It is a case of political education. And yeah, Paul, you're right. It is because these people who write these things listen, but they have the opportunity to be aware of the surroundings. And, certainly for, 1984 and the philanthropist, as I've mentioned, it was very much a time of destitution, and I guess most people were just trying to live through the drudgery, but these creative thinkers had the opportunity to look around them and see what was going on and commit that to paper. There's not a lot of opportunity for people to do that now, unless you are gifted with a certain lifestyle that gives you the space to do that. Most of us aren't. Most of us are just desperately trying to get through every day, trying to get the kids to school, trying to get people fed, trying to do a day's work and get home safely. So I think trying to remove the arts, like I said, remove the arts from our curriculum is going to be essentially really damaging to our movement as a whole. Not least because kids need that outlet. Adults need that outlet as well. We need something that is, beneficial to us mentally, but because also that then we don't end up with these critical thinkers in the end. We end up being slaves to the patriarchy and capitalism and everything that's gone before that's damaging. So yeah, sorry, I'm going on these really, really larger than life rants tonight, aren't I? I'm sorry.
I think it's been good, man. It's been good. So lots of agreement with the idea, like what David Graeber said, and also the idea that the important thing is to listen, which, that's a huge thing I've learned from Socialist Think Tank, like sitting and listening to people and getting people who actually probably wouldn't necessarily have a voice, or certainly not on like a broadcastable voice or haven't to this point, because they don't have that access. That's been really important to me, to listen to people. And a lot of the people, obviously I agree with people, but they're listening to people who don't necessarily agree with them as well, so that's been really good. And there's something here that I want to address in a second. I firstly want to talk about the Labour result, where it is Mia Mantri says, I think the by-election result was a rejection of both main parties. People don't see Labour as credible opposition at the moment. I was pleased to see the Tories lose a seat, though. It is reassuring to see the electorate reject them. That's pretty spot on, isn't it? I think, is that how we feel? Just as a kind of yes or no thing, is that a yes, we support that?
Definitely.
Yeah. Oh, Laurie, you've gone mute.
Sorry, I missed some of it because Penny was scratching at the door, but I'm sure I agree.
Yeah, we generally tend to agree with Mia. Angie Ray has said the trade unions used to provide such education. How can we recreate that? Now, this is interesting. I think like maybe the last half hour or so we might dip into the trade unions a little bit more. But based on my experience as a trade unionist, is Penny Growl in there? Are you winding her up? What are you doing to her?
No, I have some I didn't get a chance to eat any dinner, so I have some olives
So
and
you have some.
cheese,
Well,
and
she
Penny wants
deserves it.
them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, good reason to growl. As a trade unionist, I'm in NASUWT, and like there's brilliant aspects to that union. And I learned a lot through that particular union, and there are some less good things. I think the new laborization of everything is certainly present in NASUWT at times when people they think it is more important to be pragmatic, and there's less of that. No, hang on, we're all for the workers. Like there is some ground given there, I think. And education, I learned so much through being a trade union rep. I learned all about anti-racism education, and I don't know. I learned from the people, from talking to people like someone like Jerry Bartlett, who was just an absolute legend of the left wing movement, as far as I'm concerned, and so many other people who taught me how to be a good trade union rep. And I don't know. Maybe it'd be nice if that education side of it. I suppose you have to get involved though. Like we used to do the education, but it's getting people involved. They're too busy to do this, and it's another thing that we spoke about today. The only power you have in a workplace as a trade unionist is the power of collectivism. And if you've got one eye on saying, but one day I want to be the boss, and if there's like 20 people who will never be the boss, all thinking, yeah, but one day if I suck up a little bit and now, then that'll benefit me in the long term. It's that individualism versus collectivism. And I think that's what we need to teach. It's like, one thing is the reality that you are part of a collective, and most people will not end up being the boss. It's that X Factor thing as well. Like, one day I might win the X Factor. One day I might win the lottery. Well, you won't, will you? The chances are that you won't. You're part of a collective, and one thing's convincing people of that. And then the other thing is, like, once you're in there, once people get engaged with that, they do learn and they do pick these things up. But that was what, like, two disputes, nearly 10 years apart. Actually, 10 years apart. 10 years apart exactly. The first dispute, everyone knew that they were in that together, that they were part of a collective where the boss was doing something terrible to them and we needed to be sticking together. The second dispute was actually there were some people who were surrounding the boss who were quite willing to throw other people under the bus and have other people lose their jobs in order to somehow get some sort of promotion in the future. And those people are now saying, oh, can we have the union come and help us because we're being treated terribly now? It's like, you've blown it. You've blown it. You had a chance to, like, stick together and you scabbed it. Don't be a scab is the message there, by the way. But that's... This is what we need to be doing. We need to be educating people around collectivism and away from individualism. And I think, again, New Labour spoiled that quite a lot because they didn't rope Thatcher back on any of the things that Thatcher said about being an individual. That was never stopped. Sorry, I've ranted on.
Don't be
You're
sorry. Yeah. We love a good rant. Yeah, I think the trade union movement, it should be responsible for that sort of thing. That essentially is our job, to educate people on, even like from the little bits to the big bits. Like, don't worry about learning to go into big political arguments. Start small. Start thinking about how to develop your own voice, how to talk about things that you care about, and how to get people on side, how to work collectively, things like that. That is what we should be working towards. And also, there's so many people now, and as Angie pointed out, the gig economy at the minute doesn't really have a massive trade union membership because trade unions are quite expensive to be part of. They're not that cheap if you are in a gig economy and you are working hand to mouth and you just got a certain few hours here and there. But you've got things like Unite Community, who's work really hard with people in the gig economy, people who don't work, so you can still be part of that movement. I think it's important for the trade union movement to teach people about why the trade union movement was important in the first place. And for those of us who are involved, it kind of seems really obvious. But I work for a trade union as well as being part of a different trade union. And I know that there's a lot of people don't join because they use it as an insurance policy. Something might happen, so I better join. And so you find the membership in things like teaching and in the NHS and stuff a lot higher because those are quite risky jobs. Whereas people working in retail and things like that, may not join the likes of Usdaw and things like that, which they should be doing, because it's not just about what if something happens to you, it's about what if something happens to retail workers as a whole that you can get involved in. What if something happens to one of your colleagues that you can help? We really need to promote this. Why do trade unions exist? Well, what is it that they do that is important, and why is it important that we work together to solve problems? They may seem like really simple questions that we could here, I'm sure, answer really easily, but for the most part people are just going to work and going home and just dealing with whatever comes to them. They don't need to know any of that stuff. So it's important for us to make sure we're delivering that message and getting people on board with the trade union movement. And I know we do try not to talk about the Labour Party too much, but the Labour Party was founded on trade unionism and it needs to get back to that. And if we can regain that link, then we can tell working class people that their voice will make a difference in politics, in the structures that do have the decisions over what our life will be. Now, whether that happens currently or not is a different question. But yeah, I think Angie's absolutely right that you've got to find some sort of collectivism, some sort of work family, and the trade union movement should be the way to do that.
By the way, Laura, you missed a massive chance to plug one of our previous episodes there.
Which one?
You lost a point when you mentioned Usdaw.
Usdaw, yeah. Okay, so we have one of the one of our interviews. She works at Usdaw. She's absolutely brilliant. She talks really well. She's called Lisa Collins. We did do an interview with her. Bless her, she was really nervous, even though she's like a public speaker as her job, and she was fantastic. So go back and watch Lisa Collins's origins because she's brilliant.
She's just like one of the reasons we set it up is because like we think, well, imagine if all the nice normal people we've met, and like I say normal, I'd say that with the most massive respect. I want everyone to be normal people in all their diversity, people you can relate. I probably should use the word relatable. But Lisa was one of those people where you think she's so relatable yet so good at her job and knows what she's on about. So yeah, she's worth a watch. So we've got a few more people. Ruth's worried that Penny's trying to eat our cushions. That's fine. She can eat them. Quantum Skylines just asked me a question. Paul, while it's good to be part of a collective for the benefit of all, do you still hold value in having your own personal dreams, however likely it is to happen? Yeah, it's well worth watching some of the interviews that we've done because we try and dispel this myth that socialism means everyone's the same. In fact, socialism means that everyone has the opportunity to try and do what they want to do. It's freedom. And actually, I think that came... there's so many plugs tonight. Shardine Taylor-Stone, that came up with. It came up with last week's Socialist Night Live with Alice from In Evil Hour. I think Grace Blakely mentioned it as well. And there are so many people who we've talked... dear me. Why can't I remember her name?
Whose name?
Your mate Laura from Coronation Street in Emmerdale. Charlie
Hardwick.
Charlie Hardwick. Like we talked about, like the idea of socialism is the idea that expressing your own creativity and really, it shouldn't be drudgery for the working class, and that's what it is under the current system. People are expected to turn up and work longer and longer for less and less, and that is what's happening. And the creative side of it is a huge thing. So not necessarily when I talk about winning the X Factor, I'm talking about like that dream thing that all of a sudden your life's going to be great. Well, we know that when people won the X Factor, their lives became awful. You know, they were treated terribly. They had this awful experience, and you look at like what Jedward's revealed and all those people. They had a terrible time, and they were supposedly living the dream. What we mean is a real dream, where you go out and do those things and have a nice life, and have as much as you need to live on, without making everyone else's lives a misery by taking up too much of the resources and what have you. So yeah, definitely, it's definitely worth having this. I know creativity is a huge part of socialism as far as I'm concerned. So sorry, Jane, you haven't spoken in a little while. I just wanted to answer that one.
Oh, thank you. Actually, Charlie, Shardine, and Lisa Collins were three of my favourite shows. They're all absolutely fantastic. So I definitely recommend watching those. And are you getting Jedward on the show?
Oh, I'm
If we can.
genuinely trying. I'm genuinely trying. Actually, so I want to get Jedward on, but I also want to get. Oh my God, I knew I'd forget her name. She won one year. Rachel. I'm going to forget. Anyway, right. So one of the winners is she's started a campaign against the music industry, and she's highlighting all these issues that she had on the back of her win with X Factor, and how badly they treated her, and especially how badly they treat women. And she was made to sit and watch the other contestants get bullied, and she was told she wasn't allowed to make friends with anybody else. Some of the staff were told, like genuinely, the staff at X Factor and the staff at the record company were told they had to try and split her and her boyfriend up, because it was not ideal for her to have a boyfriend if she was going to be famous. So they would get involved in their personal lives. And there's just a lot of bullying and a lot of abuse that goes on. And yeah, it's really, and I noticed Mia there saying Jessie Nelson, who won the X Factor, she's part of Little Mix, was bullied. She was bullied externally because she was the fat one, even though she was not even approaching fat. And even if she was, it shouldn't matter, because she's talented and lovely and all of that. We put far too much focus on how people look. But Jedward and I can't believe I've forgotten her name. Like, she's really good, and I'm in conversation with her at the minute, trying to get her on the show. I will remember it. I'll post that link on here.
It's our age, Laura.
I know, sorry. It is our age. I'm old now. But she's talking about people within the industry, people who were trying to control them, and basically just use them as a tool for their own monetary gain. And I guess that comes as not really a big surprise to me. I kind of always thought that was a thing, but then that in itself's really bad. If we're accepting that that's okay, that's awful. Like, that's on us as well. That's not okay. So yes, I am, Jane, I'm trying. And if anybody knows Jedward, if anybody watching has any tiny links, please ask them. We'd love to have them on. Like, I genuinely think they're really good. Not like I haven't heard their new album. I'm sure it's great, but I mean, in terms of political commentary, they're always spot on, and I think that would really surprise a lot of people. They're brilliant. I'd love to have them on the show. So yes, anyone who knows Jedward, tell them to come on.
I was shocked to the core.
I
was shocked to the core to find out that they were, more politically in tune than me, than the Labour Party front bench. I think Jedward are politically spot on, and the Labour Party front bench, well, the less said the better. So Jane, any comments on that? I'm going to bring in a comment from Scott soon. Scott Marriott.
I just wanted to go at something Angie said again. And Angie, thank you so much for staying up to listen to this, because I know she had practically no sleep last night. So, but she said that a lot of workers nowadays, they're gig economy, they're drivers working on their own. They haven't even got the opportunity of working, in a collective. That's so difficult for them. So I'm thinking, with the education and the arts side of things, should the trade unions be looking to play a long game with the gig economy side of things and attract people in through offering something, about offering people the opportunity to do the arts and have education if they want it, and build a movement and build knowledge that way.
Yeah, I think that sounds like something to support. So the last topic of tonight it can be brought in nicely by Scott. So I'm going to mention Scott's comment. He said, "What do you think about Steve Turner shaming the left for fighting back against the smears and suspensions, and him claiming we're trying to get a purist left, when the Labour right actively purging the left to get a purist centre right? Do you think that raises a concern knowing Beckett stood down to support Turner?" Firstly, I'm going to take this in a few different parts. So the first one is, what do we think of Howard Beckett standing down? Jane?
That's brilliant. It's so good to see Beckett and Turner standing together. They both have so much to offer. And if we can combine the two of them, then that is one amazing option for us. I really hope they win.
And Laura?
Yeah, I think it's been a tough one, because I've seen the work that Howard Beckett's done. He's been on a lot of shows like this one, and he's very vocal, and his opinions appear to entirely match my own. But Steve Turner as well, I've been a vocal supporter of Steve Turner. I think he has, he has the same beliefs as I do, and actually that Howard does as well. They go about it in different ways, and it's kind of a case of which one's better. And it was really difficult, and I think it was Unite really do lead the way on things like this as a union, and I think they need to continue to do that. Personally, on a personal level, I feel if somebody like Gerard Coyne was to get into power, it would change things dramatically. I don't think we'd be as much of a voice for the working people as we should be. And we had three people who aligned themselves with the left and working class and all of that, and that was going to split the vote, and it looked like Jared was going to win. So for me, this is a really good thing. Two really strong candidates working together. We always bleat on about collectivism here. If we can get the passion of Howard Beckett and the experience of Steve Turner together. Steve started from the ground up. He was a shop steward. He was a member, then a shop steward, and he's gone at every single level throughout the organisation. If he can then become general secretary, alongside Howard Beckett, who's going to help him with that, passion and media presence and all of that, I think that will be the perfect mix. And I think if that becomes a reality, Unite will continue to be a force for good, and continue to hold any government to account.
From my point of view, I'm not a Unite member, so I don't really have the right to have a huge opinion on this one, I guess, because this is down to Unite members. That's the important thing. It's got to be members that are represented, although I do care about this. I really do care about this. But I think if I was in a position where someone was willing to stand down for someone else and actually did it, the sad thing about electoral politics is that's the kind of person I want to vote for. Someone willing to stand down for the greater good. And I've always said that, one of the things that about being a prime minister, say for a prime minister or an MP or whatever, is if you don't want to be those things and then get asked to do it, and then say, well, I'm willing to do it because of responsibility rather than wanting to do it. I think that's a big deal. Ambition shouldn't be the thing that puts you in these positions. It should be, you're wanting to get the right outcome, I suppose. And I was thinking all the way through this, what could Howard Beckett do as leader, as the General Secretary of Unite, that he couldn't do now? And I couldn't think of anything that he is unable to do with his strengths, his political strengths, his outspoken ways, his media presence, his intelligence around, the law and working, the law at work and what have you. I don't think there's anything that he couldn't do that he couldn't do now that he would have been able to do if he was General Secretary. Although, as soon as he stepped down, I was like, well, if I had a vote and he was still in, I would vote for him because he stepped down. Do you know what I mean? Do you know, that kind of like once you show that kind of solidarity. So fair play to Howard Beckett. I think that's the first thing to say. We've sort of really stayed out of this as Socialist Think Tank because we've got some of our members who are really very supportive of Howard Beckett, and there are some people who are supportive of Steve Turner. We've got a couple who are Sharon Graham fans as well. Oh, it's fans, sorry, that's a bad word. Supporters. Which is, like, the wave and go on, Sharon. But yeah, so we've kind of stayed out of this. I think the important thing is the outcome for workers. The Labour Party outcome's probably I think the United have looked kind of irrelevant lately with Starmer in charge. He doesn't seem to care about what the trade union movement say, so let's see how that turns out. But on that note, on the Beckett note, then fair play to him, I think. With regards to what was said by Scott about Turner, I don't know whether he's certainly, like, he's listening to people who are in the working class, and I'm not sure how well he's articulating. We read that article that he did in The Sun in 2018, didn't we? He didn't do it in The Sun, but The Sun reported what he said at a Fringe meeting, and me and Laura were reading this earlier on. And it's
not that we read The
saying,
Sun as a matter of course. We try not to. We avoid it.
We read it because
horrendous.
someone else was criticising him for it, so we had a look, and it, on the face of it, it kind of didn't look that great. But I think what was going on there is it was just a out of context, badly articulated piece. He was saying we should be out protesting against Saudi Arabia when they come, as well as Donald Trump, and things like that. And I think sometimes when you make those points, it's really, really difficult to make those points. I try and make the point all the time that, you know, people have the right. I said the other night, people have the right to boo when people take the knee. When the England footballers take the knee, people have the right to boo. I wouldn't take that away from them. I also have the right to call them a complete dickhead for doing that, and we have the right to, like, go at them and say, like, this is the world we need to live in. We can't pretend people don't have opinions and expect those opinions to go away because you pretended that they don't have those opinions. And I think that's what Steve Turner, from that one, I haven't read the Huffington Post article that was mentioned, but from that one, that's where I thought Steve Turner was coming from. Like, you know, people have other concerns. Why aren't we being so aggressively militant towards Saudi Arabia as we are towards, and he said Iran as well. You know, it's that thing. I don't know. He's maybe not a political figure as much.
I think that's why having Howard Beckett on side will really help them work as a team. I don't think Steve Turner's necessarily, like, pro-war or pro, you know, whatever people have assumed from that article. I think you can't fight every battle in one article. You can't talk about every single issue, but you can say you can't do this without doing this. And I think it was probably clumsily worded, but I don't think you can take that Steve Turner has support from one place and not another from that article. Well, you can pick out what you want from it, and there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of subtext there that I think people could imagine. But it's really difficult to navigate the media like that. I think Howard Beckett probably does have more of a strength in that aspect. I do want to say Rebecca Ferguson is the girl, or the woman, sorry, from X Factor, who started this campaign. There's a lot of women and actually men now on board. I think Jedward are on board with it. So please, Jedward, come on our show. Rebecca Ferguson, come on our show and talk about it. It's really important. Like, I'm smiling my head off, but it's genuinely really important. You're being abused. Like, you're not getting paid for the privilege. No, it's like, we need to talk about this. It's huge. And also because it feeds into all the stuff we always talk about. People don't want to question taxes, don't want to say rich people should be taxed more, don't want to question that hierarchy, because if they win X Factor one day, it might be them. Well, actually, if one day they do win X Factor, they're going to have a shit life, because this is the way winners of X Factor get treated. They are a tool of the trade, you know? So sorry to bring it back to that, but yeah, we need to do that. We're going to work on that. I promise. Imagine if we got Jedward on, though.
It'd be hilarious, I think. I've found the article that is being mentioned about Steve Turner, where it says United Steve Turner warns a split left vote could hand Union to centrist rival. So I will read that. I can't read it now because otherwise that would be a terrible podcast. If it's just a couple of minutes silence while I read things. It's not great podcasting, is it? But we definitely will read that and address it now. With there's a couple of other great comments as well. Apparently on Labour Grassroots in the morning, not the Andrew Marr show at 10:30. Crispin Flintoff's talking to Howard Beckett, who's on there. So I suppose the outcome here is if Howard Beckett's willing to back someone, and you're willing to back Howard Beckett, then you should be willing to back that person. Whether or not that's because Howard Beckett thinks he can have influence, for a positive influence or whatever. If you're a Howard Beckett supporter and he's backing someone else now, excuse me, the logical thing is to just go for it and, just vote for Howard Beckett's candidate, who is now, whether or not you think it was good that he dropped out or not. And I think that's an important... I don't know. I just think that Beckett's going to become continue to be a huge figure in Unite, if Turner wins. But that's it. That's all I'm going to stay out of the Unite thing from now on. But yeah. Now the last thing. What about John Bercow joining Labour? So John Bercow has joined the Labour Party. Is this news to us all?
Is it true?
Yeah. I've just googled it. It's true. Yeah, he's joined the Labour Party.
Yeah. So there you go.
Welcome, John.
I think he had too many principles to be in the Tory party, so
of course he did. Yeah,
I can see why he's moved.
He's been on a journey, hasn't he? Though, years and years ago, he was to the right wing of the Tory party, and then he ended up being the hate figure for the right of the Tory party because he tried. I think what happened is he was a Democrat. He was a democratic person, and he saw. And we've seen it's funny. We've seen this in Sedgefield, and everything's you get these big things, but everything's about people. Everything's about people. So at a small level, if you behave democratically, there will be some people who, regardless of the outcome, will respect democracy. And John Bercow seems to be one of those people. Although, a lot of the people in Parliament seem to be trying to subvert democracy by subverting Brexit, which was wrong. The people had spoken, they should have just accepted that. But he also saw his job as being a chair to the people in Parliament, and he wanted people to listen. And he was very, very kind to Jeremy Corbyn when everyone said he was an anti-Semite. He said the only people who's ever been anywhere near anti-Semitic to him are people in the Conservative Party, and he doesn't believe for 1 second, given that he's a working, I think he was working class, John Bercow, and a Jewish man himself, or of Jewish descent. He said that there's absolutely no chance that Jeremy Corbyn was ever anti-Semite, and he knew that, and he was very supportive of it. Of Jeremy Corbyn, and was kind to him. So if that's the reason you've joined, John, come over here, give us all a hug. You seemed an alright fella. You've probably got politics that are miles away from me, and you're probably far from a socialist. But you are far, far, far to the left of some of the people I know in the Labour Party. That about right?
Yes, I would agree. I really would agree. I can't believe it's been on for nearly an hour and a half. It hasn't. I feel, Jayne, I'm so sorry. I'm not normally this talkative. We barely let you speak, and you were probably more articulate than both of us put together.
I take the praise, but it's not true.
Scott has said the fact that you've said he's not as political as Beckett is spot on, and the actual issue. Turner doesn't understand. He wants to keep Unite out of politics, which essentially hands Labour over to the rich and lobbyists. that is the most catastrophic outcome possible. Unite has to play lobbying tug of war with Martin Taylor for the workers to have a voice in politics and Labour. That can't be understated. The people individually can't hope to be outbid. Can't hope to outbid a billionaire hedge fund manager. My only point there would be: do we think Beckett has stood down in order to capitulate his position on politics, or do you think he's stood down with a guarantee that he will get free rein in politics? Like, I'll not say who, but there's a pretty major figure in Northeast politics who suggested something that I'd actually suggested in a different WhatsApp chat, but it was really, really weird. That, like, I was saying, well, you know, you give like Sharon Graham the organising remit and just say, right, you run with that, you do what you want to do, and then Steve Turner does the day job of being the general secretary, and then Howard Beckett just like leads the politics side, and they all get free rein, and that would be an ideal outcome. Now, surely Beckett must have had some sort of guarantees that he's going to have the political clout that he wants to have. Surely, otherwise, like, why would he have stepped down?
I feel like he's far too passionate in that respect to just go, yeah, I might not win this, I'll step aside. I don't feel that that's Howard Beckett. I hope. I don't know. I haven't been in the room where it happens. Quoting Hamilton there.
You're going to do a bit singing?
No, I've seen enough singing today. Thank you very much. I watched my good friend perform in a Broadway online show, and she was by far the best singer in it. She was incredible. But anyway, moving on from that.
The Basketball Man was the best. Sorry.
No, yeah, okay. You made me lose my train of thought. Now I'm going to go and rewatch it. Oh God, what was I saying? Howard Beckett, yes, I do believe that he must have been given some sort of remit or something to work on. He's really political. He really holds the Labour Party to account. That is not news. That is just what he does. People have seen it for a long time, and I can't believe that he'll go, yeah, okay, I'm going to step away from this because I might not win. I don't feel like that is Howard Beckett. So I would hope that there's been that conversation and that Steve will continue to work. Steve's whole thing is members and looking after members. And I think if he keeps that role and keeps that focus and he works alongside Beckett, who will do the political side of things, I feel like that could really work for us. I think that would be the most beneficial thing we could do.
Final thing, the very final thing, and I'm going to ask you both about this, but in a minute, I'm going to photobomb you. So have you ever photobombed someone? Like, you know, just, is that the kind of thing you get up to? Do you photobomb? Because I'm going to photobomb you in a second. Hang on.
God. What's he doing?
No, oh no. Oh no, I seem to be on.
Oh no, I didn't know
screen.
Paul was going to be here. Oh no.
None of us knew.
This happen.
This was an accident. This, like, you know, what an awful, awful situation where I've come in and I've photobombed you somehow. So this is obviously the Angela Rayner thing. So Angela Rayner did a little speech. Barry Gardner was doing the what was it? It was the Unite
Fire and Rehire.
Which is, like, you know, campaigning against fire and rehire, which is, it should be a no-brainer, but Starmer hasn't come out and supported it yet. But Angela Rayner claimed that Jeremy Corbyn was only on the platform with her because he photobombed her. He photobombed her, even though he passed her the microphone, and she knew, dear me. I used to really like Angela Rayner. I had a few beers with her a couple of times, and she was good crack, but
Can I just play devil's advocate here? I worry. It was clearly a lie and clearly a clumsy attempt to cover something up. It was so stupid and like so unbelievable and clearly not true that Angela's more clever than that. I worry that she's done it in a reaction and is scared that of the repercussions of that. I do feel like she's been forced into corners many times. I realise many people say, well, she's done it to herself. There's definitely an element of that. You know, I've lost a large amount of respect for her over the last couple of years. But to go, oh my God, I didn't know he was going to be there, as he was one of the speakers. Like, she's clearly just gone, oh shit, oh, I didn't know he was going to be there, and realised she's going to get in trouble for it. Now, what does that say about our structures here in the Labour Party, that we would punish her for just being in the same place as somebody? You know, there's plenty of our MPs who are in the same place as Green Party, Lib Dems, Tories when they're campaigning for something. So why is Jeremy Corbyn the devil to the Labour Party all of a sudden? And what repercussions for Angela will that have? It did feel a bit like a panic attack. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't well thought out. It wasn't a good argument. It was terrible. I don't believe Angela's that stupid to go, this is what I'll say. Do you know what I mean? Is that making any sense at all?
Did she actually say it? Because the Squawk Box article is where I read it, and it said a source close to her. So
Right, okay.
I don't know if she actually said it or if someone said it on her behalf.
Yeah,
I hope
maybe we
it is
should
the
be
latter.
kind. Maybe we should be kind to people, because it's either really silly, or I don't know. It's just got a bit beyond a joke, hasn't it? The whole thing. It's like, you know, you've got. Why would you be? There's people who stand on a platform with Tories all the time. You know, there's people who. Oh, did you see what Nick Bowles said, by the way? Did you see Nick Bowles' tweet? That was interesting. So one of the Tories who ultimately lost his seat, following like the Change UK kind of thing, and he was someone who was involved in Change UK. Like, I can't remember whether he defected or what, but he was saying, well, ultimately, although Brexit still happened, and you know, the most important thing, basically his tweet was like, regardless of everything we achieved, and regardless of the fact that I ruined my career in politics, the outcome was that Jeremy Corbyn didn't become the Prime Minister, and that was generally the idea. Yeah, that was what we were aiming for. And it was a bit of an admission that, you know, the whole thing was everything that Change UK did and everything that they were trying to do and everything like the People's Vote and all that wasn't about the EU, it wasn't about like Brexit at all. It was actually about removing Jeremy Corbyn. It was quite like a, you know, we all knew it anyway, and to see it in writing was quite a shock. But I think that's where we are in politics at the moment. There's this Westminster consensus of, oh yes, the worst thing in the world that could have happened is if the establishment had got a black eye, and you know, that's where we are, I think. Sorry, that's not a question, is it? But Jane, you tell us a little bit about what you think about this. Oh, and someone's mentioned Blair wanting to come back to Westminster as well.
Yeah, I did read, because of what you might think, I've read someone saying he thinks he'd be better now than he was then. I don't think he'd be better now than he was then, leaving aside any comment on how he was then. So, I don't know, Laura, did you have something more articulate to say?
About Tony Blair?
About anything. Maybe not about Tony Blair. It's probably safest if we don't talk about Tony Blair.
I don't know. I really don't know. It's just, we've talked about so much tonight that I have many opinions on everything, and I don't want to go on another rant. But I feel like we've barely touched on the interview we did tonight on the Gemini project, which was something I was really passionate about, and something that it was the first social ties that we've done in a long time, and I'll be honest, I was a bit nervous, but Lucy, I thought, was just incredible, and she was, I told her she was brave, and she was very much like, no, I'm not, but actually to have experienced what she and her sister had done, and to go through everything that they had to go through, and then to make something positive out of it. We said at the beginning of the show, and we didn't get a chance really to flesh out what happened in the interview. I just think it's a really, really important conversation to have. And it kind of goes back to what we've been talking about, charity and stuff. You know, the Gemini Project is a project that is put together to support and help women who've been victims of assault or rape or domestic violence, and who aren't believed, and the justice system just simply doesn't work for them. Now, that for me is something that simply shouldn't need to exist. Our justice system should be robust enough to not victim blame. There is, for me, a massive amount of misogyny in our justice system, and for a victim to have to prove that this has happened rather than the guilty to have to prove themselves innocent. It just all is really messed up. And you know, there's so many, because it's so bad. The percentage of women who actually report these crimes is, I think it's something like 7%, and that is just of what we know, because most women don't talk about it. And then those who do report it, it's 1.3% of those go to court and actually get a conviction. The ones who do go to court, it's slightly higher, but there's a lot of them just get kicked out, because it's very much come to the point where it's he said, she said. It's really sad. It's devastating. It's awful that we live in a society that doesn't believe women when they come forward with something. And you know, there's of course the small, and I mean minuscule element of people, women and men, who come forward and go, this happened, and it hasn't, and they lie and make it up. But we can't use that as an excuse, because that statistic is so low. It's another form of whataboutery for me. What about those people who blame men, and then, oh, the men's lives are ruined? I'm so sorry, but the majority of women who come forward and are brave enough to say, this happened to me, it's happened. It's not funny to make this shit up. It's not something people do for shits and giggles. It's serious, and it needs to be taken seriously. And I just thought, Lucy's a really young woman, and what happened to her when she was very young. She was a young teenager, and she's had to grow up with that, and she's had to deal with that, and now this is part of her life. It's part of who she is. And I've got a young girl myself, and the thought that anything might happen to her terrifies me, absolutely terrifies me every single day. And the likelihood that something will happen to her is astronomical, because every single woman, you know, when we did the whole, after Sarah Everard's murder, when we talked about reclaim the streets, and we started having those discussions about sexual assault, even like inappropriate touching and inappropriate talking. Every single woman I know has experienced something, so the likelihood is my daughter will experience something at some point. And I struggle to cope with that, really struggle to cope with that, because I don't know. I'll be there for her and I'll listen, but the chances that somebody will tell their mum about what's happened to them are also really, really tiny. So I thought the interview was really important, and you'll have seen me, if you follow me on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, I've pushed this interview ever since we did it, because I just found it so important. And I really would encourage anybody who didn't get the chance to see it tonight. It's on our YouTube, it's on our Facebook. I think it might be on Twitter. I'm not really sure how that works. Paul will tell you if it is or not. It's not on Twitter. Go on YouTube. But it's there, and it's well worth a watch. She's fantastic, and spread the word. They do help. They're very much a signpost, an organization. You can tell them what's happening, and they'll tell you where to go for help. If you are struggling, if you are suffering, if you've experienced something, don't suffer in silence. You don't have to. It's not something to be embarrassed about. It is not something to feel shy about. Something has been done to you. This is not your fault. Don't feel guilty. Please accept that someone has been a shithead to you, and go and find help. You can do it. There are people who will help, and it's really, really important. Until we get a justice system that is actually justice, you need to find help where you can. And there's plenty of organizations. You can contact Socialist Think Tank. We can help signpost you to people who can help. And I know I go on and on and on about it, and I'll continue to go on and on about it, because I think it's so important, because this happens daily. and there are so many levels of it. If you are feeling uncomfortable, chances are you are being treated badly and you need to get out of that situation, and you can talk to people. There are people to talk to. So yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, it was a brilliant interview, and thank you to the Gemini Project for what they do, because incredibly brave people. Jayne, hard to
Yeah,
follow that one, isn't it? You know,
it
it's
is.
we've been kind of downbeat and then upbeat and then downbeat again, but it's it's such an important thing to do. We do the whole range of emotions here on Socialist Think Tank. So.
We do.
I think we need to bring Jedward back in at this point somehow, seamlessly. Maybe they can do a jingle for the show.
What a good idea. I love that. Jedward and Joe Solo. I love that.
That works. That definitely works.
Left wing collaborative. Yeah. So like I think closing comments. Laura, was that your closing comment there?
I think it needs to be. I think we've heard enough from me tonight.
Jayne?
Yeah, it was a really brilliant interview. I'm really glad I saw that. And Lucy's so brave, incredibly brave. It must be so hard to talk about something like that. And she made some really good points about what needs to be done to change the situation. And I remember her saying that Gemini Project's actively involved in, trying to change legislation as well to make some positive changes apart from the support they're offering people. So definitely watch that interview.
Brilliant. All I'm going to say is thank you so much to Jayne for coming on. And thank you, Laura, for doing a social ties. Like, it's been there's been 39 origins in a year. So that's quite a lot of interviews to do. And we've managed to, we've got a lot of content on Socialist Think Tank now. We've got a hell of a lot of content. So it's I think we're going to be resting a little bit on the pre-recorded interviews. Please, members and viewers and everyone, do tell people about this, because we think we're not here to try and tell people that we're amazing or anything like that. It's not about us. It's about the stories that we tell. It's about the people who we learn from. We think everyone's equal, but these stories are massively important. Ordinary working class people or people who've had experiences of certain things, they're the stories we want to tell, and we want to bring people with us. So please do recommend us to your friends and your family. Tell people to subscribe to us on YouTube. Become a member of Socialist Think Tank. If you really wanted to be super kind, you can donate to us as well if you're a member, because it does help us to try and grow Socialist Think Tank, as well as make sure that we're not under attack from Russian bots, which we have been many times in the past. So it completely dispels the idea that we are pro-Russian. We are pro-socialist, not pro whatever. Russia's super capitalist now, yeah? So yeah, definitely not that. Anyway, that's a weird way to end it off. So, so weird. But yeah, like, share, and subscribe. I should have just said that, shouldn't I? Anyway, thank you so much, everyone who's been involved tonight. Thank you so much to Jayne for coming on. You're an absolute legend, and you are so good at this. You should do this all the time. This is really good. And we will see you all again soon. Shall we give everyone a wave? We'll stay on for a second, Jayne. We'll have a little chat behind the scenes and say thank you and tell everyone, tell you amazing to your face how it's not just pretend. Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Thanks everyone,
Bye.
and we'll see you again. Bye.
Keep the red